Okay, so we're going to start off the first in our series of dies. We'll start out with the sizer dies and steel versus carbide. First off, I'll apologize for the crappy camera in advance. Hopefully it's not going to sit here through the whole thing and do the autofocus and flashy light stuff. Hopefully I've got enough coffee to get through this one, as y'all are bad luck. Seems like every time I start to do a requested video, you gotta apologize for the background noise, that's our heat pump kicking on. Every time I start to do a requested video, it drops to freezing out here. So if you see a bunch of smoke and stuff in front of the camera, then that's just my breath again. I was in a t-shirt this morning and now had to dig my hunting overalls out of the closet. But just to start out here, we've had a lot of different people asking about mainly it's the carbide versus the steel, what the difference is, and also neck sizers versus full length sizers and collet sizers. So we'll get into those here in just a second. Light the heater. So for y'all that are watching this on Twitter or our other social media where it's in a window, if you can, go ahead and click the link on the video and watch the video on YouTube if possible. That way we actually get a count for the video being watched. Otherwise, it shows up as no views. If you like the video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. If you don't like it, leave a comment, tell me what's wrong with it. Again, we're just starting out, so we don't have fancy equipment. For those of you that are new to the channel, new to the videos, I don't do any editing on the videos. This isn't one of those quality production things. It's simply a start to finish with full information. So if I flub it, you know I flubbed it. I don't edit any of my screw ups out or anything like that, so you'll get used to it. So just to start off here, I guess, I just went through the drawer real quick. And again, hopefully this camera is going to work. We have our steel sizer die. As you can see, hopefully, it's a one-piece die body. Try to get it where we can cut the glare so you can see it's just a one-piece die body. Through body design. Yes, I know I need to clean my dies. They've rusted up sitting in the weather on me. But a steel die, you have to lube the case. One of the worst things that you will ever run into when loading is a stuck case in the die. It is a pain in the butt. Apparently, I'm going to have to do an entire video on just case extraction from a die body. Fortunately, I do have a lot of shortcuts where you don't actually have to go out and buy the $45, $55, $65 stuck case extractor. But again, that's another video in itself. So here is glasses. Okay, this is my 380 sizer. And if you notice here, again, I'm behind the camera with my chopstick trying to point, so you can see the insert of the carbide insert. A carbide sizer die, the body is not all carbide. Those of you that know carbide, it's hard, it's slick, but it's brittle. So the entire die body is not made out of carbide. It is simply a carbide sleeve inserted into the die. Carbide dies are generally, and I say generally, which is 99.99% of the time, going to be for straight walled cases only. The reason for that, if you have a bottleneck case or anything other than straight wall, since you size from here and points further back, which we'll get into neck sizes versus full length and body sizing in a moment, but that die has to be ground to fit the profile of the case. There are a few makers of actual carbide rifle or bottleneck die makers. They are very expensive. And again, they are very brittle. They take a lot of care. So again, what you're probably going to run into as far as carbide dies is going to be straight wall pistol cases or straight wall rifle cases. To note that, here's the old 444. So this is a example of of course it's a tapered, but it's a straight wall rifle case. However, this one is not a carbide sizer die, as you can see. There's no carbide insert. So each of these cases have to be lubricated before sizing. When it comes to the carbide versus steel dies and expense, nowadays the price is pretty much negligible. Spend the extra $5, $10, whatever it is. Get the carbide sizer die. You don't have to worry about lubricating. It takes an entire step out of the process. Makes everything so much easier, less messy. You don't have to wipe the cases off. I do use the Lee water-based lubricant. One thing you have to remember about your water-based lubricants, you can either put it on all your cases, let it dry, and then size it, or you can rub it on, and while it's still wet, you can size it. If you size it while the lube is still wet, when you get done, you need to wipe out the body of your die. That keeps all the water out of it, keeps it from rusting up. So just something to be aware of. If you're running a lot of cases, slap your lube on, take them straight from your lube pad, or finger lubing, whatever you're doing, run them through. Just remember to wipe down your die afterwards to get the moisture out so it doesn't rust. Again, back to the expense. There's not that much difference in expense between a straight wall pistol case carbide and a straight wall pistol case steel. The only reason I got the non-carbide die in the 444 is they did not make a carbide sleeve die in 444 at the time. So you take what you can get. Okay, I guess we'll get into the full length versus neck sizing. Back to my standby 243 here. A full length sizing die, as most of you already know, but for you newbies, it sizes the case mouth, the shoulders, the die body, and then you have a small base full length sizer die, which sizes down to the head and sizes the base slightly smaller. Let's see if I can, possibly I've got one here that's been sized. Yes. You can see the sizer die comes to right here. Even though the base is sitting in your shell holder, your sizer die is going to be touching your shell holder, but your normal full-length sizer die will stop at the web of the case. The only time you really have to worry about a small base sizer die, and a lot of people say if you're shooting an automatic, you need a small base sizer die. Some automatics I've found, especially in the older model, like your Remingtons, with the heavy bottleneck cases, the 243s, some some of you 30-06s, being that the 30-06 is more of a tapered case, to get it to reliably cycle, to go fully into batteries, some of those guns do really need a small base sizer die. 9 times out of 10, standard full-length sizer die is all you're going to need. But if you're running a automatic, semi-automatic, excuse me, or automatic, some of us do run automatics, but most of the time, a full-length sizer die is all you're going to need. If you're running a bolt gun, if you're not getting into bench rest shooting, you want good, reliable hunting ammo, run a full-length sizer die. If you're going to start getting into match accuracy, or you just really, really want your long-range hunting rounds to be superbly accurate, then you're going to want to start neck sizing. If you have a neck sizer, you're going to have a full-length sizer. The reason being, when you neck size a case only, that case is going to be fire formed to that particular gun's chamber. If you have multiple guns in the same caliber, you neck size only, you need to keep each set of ammunition separate for each gun. The reason being is with the neck sizer, again, that case is going to be blown out to fit the dimensions of that chamber. If you get in, your buddy gives you some 30-06 cases. He shot them in his gun. Before you shoot them in your gun, you want to full-length size them, back down to factory specs, and then from that point on, you can neck size them. What are the benefits of neck sizing? Number one, it's going to be accuracy. Also, it's going to be case life. The reason being, as we showed in the last video, full-length sizing, you're going to fire this case. It's going to blow out to fit your chamber. You're going to run it through the sizer. It's going to squeeze the brass back down. So every time you fire, you're doing this, and you're work hardening the brass. That's going to be the entire case body. If you have a looser chamber, depending on what gun you're loading for, if you have a looser chamber, then that case is going to expand more. That's even more work hardening in and out on your brass. When you neck size, you're only sizing, and you're not even sizing the shoulder, you're sizing just the neck. From here to here is all that's going to get sized. Again, that does two things in your bolt guns. It's going to fire form that case to your chamber. So when you go to chamber that round the next time, it's going to line perfectly in that chamber. There's not going to be any slop from an undersized case. Also, because you're not, again, squeezing down, blowing out, squeezing down, blowing out, it will make your cases last a whole lot longer. 22-250, this is really important in. 22-250, high pressure round. 22-250 is notorious for short case life. We've had factory Winchester cases that second loading, dump the case. We've had some Remington cases in the 22-250. We've got 5 good loadings out of. With the neck sizer, those same cases, same lot, same brand, basically bought the same factory ammunition just to get the cases out of. Half of them we full-length sized, half of them we neck sized. The ones we neck sized, cases were still viable at 10 loads. So that more than doubled the case life. Yeah, I guess we'll start with the standard sizer die. Again, a standard neck sizer die is going to be just exactly like your standard full length sizer die, only your body will be slightly oversized, and it will not start sizing until the shoulder gets to the top of the die. What a lot of us are running now is a collet sizer die. Let's see if I can get her apart here. Well, first off, let's go with the sleeve. One thing you want to remember on a collet neck sizer die, as you can see, it has a collet that floats inside the die body. It is activated by the shell holder. When this is screwed down into the press, when your ram comes up, your shell holder will hit the collet, push the collet, case and all. It is actually activated by the case, I should say. Some of them are activated by the ram hitting and pushing up. Most of your new ones are all going to be activated by the shoulder contacting the collet and then pushing the collet up against, and then it will squeeze the neck down against the mandrel. It relies on pressure. Instead of the case being squeezed against the side walls of the die body, the collet will squeeze the case mouth against the mandrel. Quick safety note here, and then I'll get to the disassembly, is if you do not have a case in this die, in the shell holder, if you run this up without a case in it, you're going to push this collet up against the top of the die body and activate the collet, and you have nothing there to keep that collet from squeezing down, and you can ruin a die that way. Best case scenario, the thing gets stuck, you got to take it apart, get out the old mallet, a couple of wooden dowel rods, and go to town. So just remember, never run a collet sizer die or any collet die without a case in the press. So, and I had to put new end caps on this, put the top out so she's a little tight. So we take the end cap out, and as you can see here, this is your decapping pin. And this determines how small that case mouth is going to be sized. They do make different size collets, and boy, I do need to clean this one. 30-06, haven't loaded 30-06s in several years, so she's been sitting out here rusting up. So a little bit of steel wool, that'll be fine. Most of your bench rest shooters, they're going to run collet neck sizers. Most of your bench rest shooters do not crimp the bullet. The bullet is held in place by neck tension only. If you're going to be running a hunting round, most people want a little tighter pull on the bullet to keep it from setting back in the case when you go to cycle the action. Most bench rest shooters, you can pull the bullet out of the case mouth with just your fingers. They single load into the chamber. Don't have to worry about bullet setback. Action's not getting cycled. They're hand loaded for each shot. So apologize again, had to wait for the heat pump to cycle through. So anyway, you can get the different diameters of the collet neck sizers. Another thing you can do is, if you want more bullet pull, you can turn down this collet. Lapping compound and a drill, if you're really good. If you're not, you can generally send it in, tell them what size die you want. 308, for example. I generally run a 307 in most of my collets. If you need a little more bullet pull, you can send this back to the company. I think they charge you $6 or something like that. Tell them what size you want it, they'll turn it down to that size. Or you can simply order one, say, hey, I need another collet, X amount of size, they'll turn it down, charge you $6. whatever they charge for shipping. So that's just something to be aware of. Oops. And I'll probably knock my camera off here. To show how this actually works, here is the collet. And the way the collet is activated, well, I don't have an AUX6 case here handy, but I'll just use the 243 for example. As this case goes in, it will contact, the shoulder will contact against the sidewalls, push this entire collet up against your top piece, which has a bevel in it. And as this is pushed up against this, it squeezes that collet down and then squeezes the case mouth around the mandrel. So your case mouth is going to be between your sidewall and your mandrel. It simply gets squeezed down to whatever size your collet is. Then when you let the pressure off, case comes out. It is sized to the size of your mandrel. As you can see, just a hollow body tube's all this is. Do not try to put it in that way. Bevel down. There is a, maybe we can see this, just a little peened over. That simply keeps the collet from falling out the bottom. So that is how a collet neck sizer works. Again, the collet is only going to squeeze this portion of the case mouth from here to here is the only thing that gets sized. The shoulder does not get sized, the body does not get sized, only the case mouth. So maybe you can see why we say that really improves case life. You also don't have to worry about annealing and all that. You're going to blow the case head probably before you have to worry about the case mouth splitting, and don't really have to worry about annealing, which, again, another video. 99 out of 100 of you are not going to get into annealing. For the 1 out of 100 of you, camera to quit flashing, yeah, we'll do you all a video for that. So, again, when you set your decapper, and I need to adjust this one. It's one of the nice things about the Lee dies and one of the aggravating things about the Lee dies. This has a pressure sleeve. If you have something in your case, when you go to push that case up, instead of this decapping pin bottoming out, it will push upwards and out the top of your die. Then you have to loosen your nut, reset that, tighten it down. It can be a pain in the butt if you have crimped in primers, say 223, military loads. Some of those primers are crimped in so heavy that it will push that decapping pin up before the primer pops out. Just something to be aware of. When you go to set the decapping, what I generally do, and well, I can show it on the 380. These, I'm sure that's wrenched down. You simply screw the decapper down into the body. The more you screw it down, the farther your decapping pin sticks out the bottom. Is it going to hurt if your decapping pin sticks out too far? Normally, it's not going to. A lot of times, though, if you have a slightly bent decapping pin or some of your cheaper dies, if this misses, if it hits the bottom of the die, then it's going to snap the decapping pin. Most all of your stem decappers, see if I can open this up without knocking everything over. I thought I had one here, Andy. And again, this is my sizer die without the decapper. I had to change a few of these. Well, I need to reset that anyway, so let's just do this. I just loosened me lock nut. Okay, so with the lock nut loosened, as I said, you can see here, screw it down. The farther that decapper comes out, again, apologize for the lighting, comes out the bottom. To take this out, this has to come out the bottom anytime you're using a stem decapper. Can't take it out the top because they've generally got an expander ball on them. So as we get her out here, you can see the expander balls, which this does not have an expander ball, is the reason this is knurled and not smooth, as this is a straight wall pistol case. However, works the same way as one with a expander ball. This is threaded on. Simply take this off, replace your decapping pin, screw it back on, and that saves you from having to replace the entire decapping stem if you inadvertently break one. And anytime you set it, once you set your decapper, basically it's set it and forget it, unless you're using one of the sleeves, and have to reset it because you had a plugged case or something like that and it goes out the top. Set it and forget it. Tighten your lock ring down. So again, as you can see, that's way too far out the bottom. To set these, generally what we will do is start where when you run the case up into the die body, full stroke, it does not decap. Simply incrementally, if I can get some better light here, my apologies again, simply screw it down a little, run your case up, see if the primer pops. Screw it down a little. Once you get it just far enough that the primer reliably pops out of the case, lock it down, that's where you keep it. That keeps this decapping pin from being too far down the case and risking getting bent or broken. A note on that, again, some of the military cases, Fiyokis are notorious for this in 223s. The primer, of course I don't have any here, but where the primers are crimped in, it will actually push the center of the primer out in a cup, letting the decapping pin come out. But because the primer cup is softer on those, well, technically a lot softer, Fiyokis have hard primer cups, but they will pooch out, and instead of the case popping out, you will bottom your die out without having enough room to pop the case out. On those, you're going to have to set your decapper farther down till you get it where it's going to pop your case out. So that's pretty much all there is to setting a die, except for the note of, once again, the difference in carbide versus steel. The difference in setting the depth on a carbide versus steel being that carbide is brittle, you do not want the shell holder coming up in contact and camming over, because that puts too much pressure on the carbide, and again, carbide is brittle, and you can break your carbide insert. On a steel case, it doesn't hurt if it cams over. generally what you want to do, and I guess I can show this since I have the press set up. Again, bad lighting. Run your press up to full stroke. Screw your sizer die down until the die body touches. If it's a steel case, when that die body touches your shell holder, lock it down. There your depth is set. If it's carbide case, you want to screw it down till it touches your shell holder and then back it off probably a half a turn. I generally set mine about the thickness of a dime between the shell holder and the die body mouth. I believe the old instructions, not that I ever read the instructions, for the carbide sizer dies in the old day, they said leave about the thickness of a nickel between the die body, between the mouth and the shell holder. That keeps you from camming your lever over on a single stage and cracking that insert. When you crack the insert, back in the old days, you would send it in, they would put a new insert in, charge whatever. Nowadays, since they're so cheap, you just buy you a new sizer die. That's about all you can do. Trying to think if there's anything else left to cover. Again, steel dies require lube. Carbide does not require lube. Vent holes, I guess I'll go ahead and touch since this is a sizer die video. RCBSs are notorious for this. My lead does not have it. Actually, yes it does. As this is a steel die body, your carbide die body will not have this hole. A steel die body, somewhere on this body, will have a vent hole. Make sure that vent hole is open and not stopped up. If that gets stopped up and you're running, especially an oil lube, your RCBS lubes, any petroleum lube, anything like that, you're going to create a hydraulic pressure and you're going to get dents in your shoulder all through here. It's going to have a bunch of pressure dents because it's just like running it through a hydraulic press. If you start getting dents in your cases, if you're running a steel die body, make sure that vent hole is open. That lets the pressure out and keeps it from denting the case. Again, if you use water-based lube, don't forget to clean your dies after each use, or go through, lube all your cases, let them set in the loading tray, let the lube dry. It still lubricates just fine. That saves you from having to clean your die body every single use. So, any questions, put it in the comments down below. I will link the Patreon and the PayPal accounts in the description. Again, if you're watching this, if you're not watching on YouTube, but in a pop-up window on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, if you can, go ahead and click the link. That way it counts as video view. We'll take all the thumbs up we can take. Hopefully we can get some views generated and some hour time on there. Any other questions, again, leave it in the comments. If I totally blew this video, feel free to leave that in the comments also. Again, we're just starting out at this, and any suggestions, not only welcome, are actually helpful. So that's Sizer Dies 101, and we'll take it from there.